The most fundamental lesson of Raja Yoga is that ultimate highest truth resides within you. There is absolutely no need for an outward God, an outward idea of heaven and hell, and so on. The highest is with you. The master key is with you. And through that very master key, you can open up all the treasures of your being. You can go on to the highest potential realization of yourself. And that is what you are in this world for. You are in this world for your highest potential realization. Now, Taoism, very interestingly, echoes the similar truth, but in its own manner. Taoism is a softer approach. It says, yes, the ultimate is within you, but you can only find it if you take the way of water. Take a soft stance towards life. Take a stance where your awareness and your entire energy can move softly yet swiftly, can flow into whatever you are doing. So the key lesson of Taoism is flexibility. Being able to maneuver your life in such a way that within the smallest activity also you find the highest truth. Raja Yoga has the glory and grandeur of the ancient Indian Sanatan Dharma. Taoism has the humility. It has the very basic ground level grassroots sort of a humility. But in essence they are joined. They are like the yin and yang of Chinese Taoism. The one side is a more masculine side, the other side is a more feminine side. And although Taoism has both the yin and the yang within its symbol, it's actually a more feminine approach. It is a more flowing approach to the highest truth. Raja Yoga is more akin to the warrior's approach to the highest truth. The warrior takes a stoic stance within themselves and says that no matter what happens, my inner consciousness will not lose courage. My inner consciousness will stand tall. So Raja Yoga is a heroic approach. The person of Taoism says that there is no need for assuming such grandeur. The person of Taoism says, I have already lost the battle. What is the need to try and be a winner in this battle of life? Life itself is futile. We come and go. We live and die. Our ultimate destiny is death. But you see, in this very approach, Taoism transcends all sorts of personal defeat. Because if you take the stance that you have already been defeated, then you actually become fearless. There is nothing for you to lose. So Taoism makes you fearless, but in its own way, and it's very interesting how martial arts has been influenced by Taoism, how it's come about as a direct result, a direct flowering of Taoism. So on the one side, you have the Buddhist side, you have the Zen side, Bodhidharma and the Shaolin martial art. The other side, you have the Taoist martial art. And its effect on world martial arts has in fact been greater in a way. So a person like Bruce Lee adopts a more Taoist approach, the way of water, not being rigid about any particular style of martial art, not being rigid in one's movements. So the Japanese Aikido style has also roots in Taoism. Being flexible, realizing that within you are all possibilities. And when you realize that, in a state of humility, you realize the state of the power of the zero. In India, it's been called the Shunya. It means the same thing. In Vedanta, it's been called the power of the Shunya, where you go into a state where you feel that you're merged with the complete nothingness of being. And so doing, all your burdens are dropped. You come into a state of unity within yourself, and you allow this unity to flow through all actions of your life. So that is the way of Taoism. Now, how is Chinese culture and Indian culture connected as far as spirituality goes? You see, Raja Yoga was a very scientific approach to the highest truth. It talked about the various energy centers in the body. It talked about the different stages of realization up to the highest realization of samadhi. But the main lesson that it continually keeps telling us is that your knowledge gathered from the outer is actually of no use. In fact, it creates a mental neurosis within you. So in that way, it tells us to get rid of even Vedantic concepts. It tells us to get rid of all that the Pandits say, all that the so-called learned people say and quote from the texts. It says that your enlightenment, your moksha, is your own responsibility. Your potential realization is your own responsibility, and you have enough within you to be able to meet that potential. There is no need to lose heart. There is no need to lose courage. From this very idea, this idea that the energy points are all within you, this very understanding of Raja Yoga traveled throughout the Eastern world, throughout the Orient. The whole science of Kundalini, the whole science of the vortexes, the spinal vortexes and chakras, the energy points in the body, these were conveyed over time to China. And the Taoist meditators realized within the depths of their own meditation how to realize the highest energies of these chakras, how to realize the luminous energy that the harmonization of these chakras can bring us. And that is why in Taoism, again, these energy centers, these energy points, the energy flow, the chi of life is really the most essential thing. So in Raja Yoga, you have the prana. In Taoism, you have the chi. Essentially, they're two sides of the same coin. You see, there's no fundamental difference. In fact, the way of looking at these things is that the planet is one, our human race is one. Somebody's created these unnecessary divisions within us. But learning and sharing, especially when it comes to things mystical, has always been there like a subterranean current. It has to do with our deepest emotions. It has to do with our deepest feelings. It has to do with our deepest aspirations. And the deepest aspiration of humankind all over is the aspiration for spiritual realization. So in that spirit, if you look at things, then you realize how the science of chakras, how the science of energy points, how being able to flow into life with an absolutely relaxed, courageous energy, free of ego, moving with the totality of your being, moving with the total blissful energy of your being, is at the very fundamental essence of both these paths, and in fact of all paths. It's an idea of spontaneously surrendering to that higher energy, which is universal energy. And that is the whole point of Taoist exercises. You see, it's steeped in Chinese culture. This entire Taoist philosophy seeped so much into Chinese culture that it didn't remain a part of just their spiritual traditions. No, it became part of their day-to-day lives. How to flow with energy that is completely free, that releases its fragrance into whatever one is doing, that releases its sense of meditation into whatever one is doing. You see, in today's world, we say the Chinese are very efficient. Chinese workers are very efficient. They have been able to utilize these in their training modules also. Some people believe it's all about regimentation. No, it is about creating a happiness of energy within yourself. The ability to work long shifts with a good energy within yourself. The ability to work tirelessly, the ability to work with a harmonized energy, with all the different aspects of yourself, working in integration, working in tandem. This is ingrained in Chinese culture. It is all about creating the energy flow, and the energy flow is from the focal points, which in Raja Yoga have been called the chakras. That is the essential thing. Everything else is non-essential. So here the concentration is not so much upon finding the nirvana which Buddhism talks about. You see, Buddhism talks about the state of nirvana. Taoism says that there is absolutely nothing to aspire to. You can be in nirvana now if your energy is flowing correct. And Raja Yoga says the same thing. It says that you can be a Jivan Mukta while you are alive if your energy is vibrating with a certain attunement to the greater energy. That allows the more profound layers within yourself to open up more and more to existence. The fullness of your being, the fullness of your bliss, the fullness of your energy to expand. It's all about expansion of energy. You see, this is again a point of commonality between Raja Yoga and Taoism. It's all about expansion of energy. And how does expansion of energy happen? It happens through going deep into your consciousness. From your very marrow of your consciousness are you to act. From the very seed of your consciousness are you to act. That is the only dharma when it comes to both Raja Yoga and Taoism. See, both these parts, they're not about philosophy basically, no. They're not about theology. They're not about religious books. In fact, the books on Raja Yoga and the books on Taoism are very negligible. They are not much at all. Compare Raja Yoga to Vedanta. Vedanta, there is reams and reams of paper about Vedanta. Similarly, about Buddhism, there are reams and reams. There are millions of books on Buddhism. There are millions of texts on Buddhism. Taoism is very, very fundamental. It just is basically the Tao Te Ching of Lao Tse. So, it is extremely a spontaneous path. It is all about your own spiritual experience, but in ordinary circumstances. It says you can find the highest peace, you can find the highest consciousness, you can find the highest compassion also. Doing what you need to do. Walking, working, sleeping, eating, whatever you need to do, within that you can dissolve into the timeless, within that you can dissolve into the eternal. And that is also what Raja Yoga is about. It is about mind, body, soul together. You see, Raja Yoga is a very complete science of mind, body, spirit. In fact, perhaps the most advanced science of mind, body, spirit. Vedanta has got to deal more with consciousness. Vedanta is not so concerned about your body. Vedanta is not so concerned about the mind. Vedanta says all that is illusionary, all that is Maya. Leave all that behind. That is not essential. What is truly essential is consciousness. Realize yourself as one with Brahman. But Raja Yoga takes a more practical approach. It says, no, mind and body are as fundamental as consciousness. They are as fundamental as spirit. Hence, they have a more practical usage when it comes to well-being. Raja Yoga is a science of complete well-being. It says that even at the mental and the physical level, we can feel unbounded. So Raja Yoga has more to do with psychology also. It makes you blissful as a mind-body personality also. It allows Arjun to act on the battlefield as a warrior. Had Krishna been talking about pure Vedanta, he would have told Arjun that, you can just Leave all this and concentrate on consciousness, and you needn't fight, because fighting is all about using the mind and the body primarily, but of course being directed by the mind. But no, Krishna eventually instructs him in the higher yoga, the king of yoga, and that is within action finding inaction, within action finding the greater, and that is the essence of Raja Yoga. Now, Raja Yoga stems from a very yogic path, the path of the yogis who really explored existence at all levels of being. They were concerned with things like breath. They were concerned with things like the inner workings of our cellular workings, how fresh and energetic you feel from within your being. Now, breathing, for example, forms a very important part of Raja Yoga, and it has been a great influence on other paths. You see, one of the most fundamental things which Raja Yoga says, that if you improve your breathing, you can improve your life. If you change your breathing, you can change your life. It says that an angry person breathes in a certain way, a peaceful person breathes in a certain way, and so on and so forth. But the miracle is not that. The miracle is that even if you're angry, and if you make your breathing as a peaceful breathing, slow, relaxed, then your mind will also become relaxed. So it follows from the breathing. So if you can bring your breathing to a particular state of being, then your quality will also follow, your virtue will also follow from there. And this influence of Raja Yoga has been tremendous throughout spirituality. The first implication, of course, we can find in the Anupanasati Vipassana meditation of the Gautam Buddha, which has become so famous. You see, it's all about breathing. It's all about watching the breath going in and out. And in fact, this is also part of Tantra, very important part of Tantra. And of course, in Taoism, this is very, very essential. The whole pattern of breathing, the rhythm of breathing, the inner harmony that it creates is really very fundamental. Now, Chinese culture, just like Indian culture, has also been a melting pot. And it's very difficult for people to distinguish what is the Buddha's role in Chinese culture, what is the role of Taoism in Chinese culture. What people don't realize is that they're not mutually exclusive. You see, from the Buddhistic perspective, Lao Tse is a Buddha. Okay? But not in a conventional sense. Because he lived a very unconventional life. He did not live in a Sangha. He did not live according to Buddhist rules and so on and so forth. Now, when I'm talking about Buddhism, it does not mean the Buddhism of Gautam Buddha. It means the Buddhism which stretches back to the Adi Buddhas, millions of Buddhas ago. In the way that Tibetan Buddhism talks about Buddhism, it's not about only Sakyamuni. No, it's about the primeval Buddhas and the future Buddhas. This whole Dharma chakra, this whole lineage, this circular flow of Buddhas throughout the universes, throughout time. That is the Buddhism I'm talking about, the eternal flow of the Buddhas. So in that cycle, Lao Tse definitely passes as a Buddha. But he passes as a Buddha who does not rely on any previous learning. He says all that is absolutely rubbish. So Taoism is a Buddhism of negation. It's a Buddhism of going directly towards bliss. It is a movement towards going directly towards unwavering joy within whatever you're doing. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You can bring transformation to it. And so doing, you make it immortal. You make it timeless. And that is the blessing. So Taoism is essentially something which is a melting pot between what the Indian yogis taught, between what flowed from the Tibetan side, between what monks such as Bodhidharma carried, and of course the native flowering of people like Chuangzu and others. So it is a confluence, whereas Raja Yoga is grown from the soil of India itself. You see, India has been a far older spiritual civilization than China. If you go to the oldest texts like the Rig Veda also talks about The Jain Tirthankars, Rishabh, Adinath, and so on, being infinitely older, they call them the ancient ones. So the dating of Indian spirituality is definitely unmatched. It goes to, which is why it's called the Sanatan Dharma. It says that it's not it's Shruti. It's been just channeled into the human being's wealth of knowledge. It comes from a different source. It does not come from a terrestrial or earthly source. It is a timeless flow of wisdom. So that way, it is supposed to have manifested for the first time in the land of Bharata, what we call India, the greater India. So it is a native flower of India. But that native flower of India has been transported to different places. And sometimes a flower can blossom even better. Its fragrance, its fruit can come even better in a strange land where it's considered exotic because the soil may suit it more. So in that way, Raja Yoga has found several manifestations, and the most obvious manifestation in China is Taoism. So in our traditions, in our Indian traditions, a person like Lao Tse would be considered an avdut, a person who is of the highest rishihood, who is of the highest intelligence and wisdom, but at the same time is completely unconventional. And that's the way he was. He was completely unconventional. He was the most intense. Yet, he was living in such a situation that nobody could have guessed how deeply and practical, and at the practical level, his teaching would take root. And his teaching has found many, many manifestations. You see, the whole people study The Art of War by Sun Tzu, the famous general. They don't realize the impact that Taoism had. People talk about Confucianism having an impact on Chinese culture. In fact, Confucianism is taken as the real or authentic Chinese way. Several other parts are taken as inauthentic ways, Confucianism is, you can call it the backbone of Chinese value system, morality, and so on. But actually, it is always the more mystical teachings which have a greater influence. And Taoism is like that. Its power is like the power of the underground river. So it cannot be seen. It is not on the surface. It flows like underground water. You don't even realize its presence. But it comes up in springs. It comes up in fountains. And the waters of it have a different quality because they're unpolluted by the touch of the human being. They come from a hidden source. So the spring water is the most clean, it is the most pure, and that is the way Taoism it is. It is completely pure, it is completely pouring deep into our consciousness, cleansing us, making us silent, taking us to the deeper mysteries of existence. It is a full-hearted way towards life. It is a way where living life is more important than God realization. The deep joy of living life with a heart that is full of reverence for creation itself is more important than having a vision of God and so on, or dying and going to heaven and so on. So they are more honest. A path like Taoism is more honest. A path like Raja Yoga is more honest. Raja Yoga, again, does not rely on an outer God. Yes, the Ishvara is talked about. The Ishvara, the primeval being, the highest being, the transcendent being, that which is the macrocosm, that which is the very source from which the light of the universe comes. But not in such a fundamental way that it's a part of the entire science of that spiritual path. No. Raja Yoga says that Your body is your own. It's up to you to cleanse it. Your consciousness is your own. It's up to you to cleanse it. Your mind is your own. It's up to you to cleanse it. Similarly, Tao says completely drop everything else that you've learned from the outside about God and so on. And you'll find that your very consciousness itself is the treasure. Your consciousness itself is absolutely that pure diamond. You don't need anything. You don't need an outer concept. You don't need an outer semblance of renunciation. Similarly, Raja Yoga does not insist upon sannyas at all. So the highest Raja Yogis, for example, King Janak, is not a sannyasi at all. He is not a renunciate at all. He is living in the world. He is doing his part. But at the same time, he is considered a paragon of Raja Yoga. Why? Because his energy has been able to internalize. He's internalized the teachings. And that way, both Raja Yoga and Taoism are sciences of internalization of spirituality. They don't believe in any outer symbols of spirituality. This is very fundamental to understand. And that way, they are not aggressive. They don't like to show themselves as being the philosophy or the path. You see, in the Indian scenario also, you'll hardly find people discussing Raja Yoga. Why? People do discuss Vedanta also, though Vedanta is such a very high scientific science, spiritual science, but they do discuss it. Because Vedanta, there are a lot of people speaking on Vedanta. Raja Yoga is a little more abstract, it's a little more esoteric. It deals with deeper things, deeper energies. So it doesn't, people who need to find its value, find its value. It doesn't need to wear its importance on its sleeve as such. Similarly with Taoism, Taoism does not believe in sects and paths and so on. Yes, there are Taoist temples, there are Taoist priests. But it does not promote itself, it does not really drum up its own importance at all. And that is because there's no need to do it. It is about very refined states of being, and it says that, there's no need to mass convert people, because how can you convert people to refined states of being? They have to find their own refined states of being. Yes, you can point. Taoism says the master can point their finger at the moon, but it's up to the disciple whether he's looking at the finger or the moon. If you remain stuck on the finger, then you become like every other religion. You see, all the priests want you to look at their own finger. And they'll make you follow their finger wherever they want to take you. But it's actually the moon which is important, that is being pointed to. And that is the way of Raja Yoga, that is the way of Taoism. So you see, through this very beautiful link between India and China at this mystical level, you begin to understand that we are actually one. In our totality, we are not separated. It is only the jargon, it is the wordage which is separated. So while Raja Yoga uses Sanskrit, Taoism would use its own language, its own Chinese. But that is not the point at all. The point is that how eager are you to knock at the door of truth? How eager are you for your self-resurrection? Both these paths are about self-resurrection. And far before Jesus' resurrection were these paths alive and well. They are traced back to antiquity. Nobody really knows how old they are. Nobody really knows, but it makes no difference because these are timeless paths. These don't believe in linear time. They don't say, oh, we had a Messiah at this and this date and our religion was founded on this and this date. So that's another very great similarity. They don't believe in linear history. They don't believe in a very, that's not a very important part of them at all. So with Raja Yoga, it is not at all important what the lineage is and so on. And so too with Taoism. It's not primarily, it's about the path without a path. You see, surprisingly, a person like Bruce Lee could enunciate Taoism far better than a lot of Taoist priests. And he did it in a very practical manner. He did it through a popular medium. He did it through the medium of film also. And more importantly, through the medium of martial arts. Martial arts had become a very closed science. There are a lot of Chinese who believe that Bruce Lee should not at all have been sharing his learnings with with Westerners and so on, with the world. So they took a very life negative approach to the whole way of Bruce Lee and his interpretation of Taoism. But he really took the essence of Taoism, and he said that all paths are restrictive. If you are rigid, if you say mine is the way of Kung Fu, this is the way I need to act, these are the rules, he says you're absolutely stagnant, because those rules were made hundreds of years ago. They don't have much meaning today. The world has changed. So in that way, Taoism is beautifully suited to being dynamic. Taoism says everything changes. There is creation, there is entropy, there is from order to chaos, and from chaos again arises order, and so on. A continual wheel, like the wheel of yin-yang, the circle, the complete circle. So Bruce Lee, in fact, had a very interesting take. He found that J. Krishnamurti personified some of these Taoist teachings better than most Taoists themselves. J. Krishnamurti lived a life which, in a way, you can look at him as a confluence between rajaYoga and Taoism. You see, J. Krishnamurti's life was an extremely disciplined life. He followed a certain discipline to such an extent that he was completely fit in body and mind well into his old age. He was an intensely fit person. He could give champions a complex. He could run and he could be so active. He was so sprightly. He was so lean and strong in his build. And that is the rajaYoga part of him. He was very disciplined when it came to his ideas of mind-body wellness. Very particular about the yoga he did at the physical level, the Hatha Yoga. Very particular about the precepts of yoga, yam, niyam, and so on. Very particular about what he ate and so on. About his different koshas. About his diet. About the basic nourishment of both body and mind. He was very particular about that. And that is a very authentic part of the old rajaYoga. Because it says that if at that level we create a wellness of being, then our entire nervous system, our entire mental, psychological system goes in sync and becomes an aid in the spiritual search instead of being a hindrance. You see, you can use the body and mind either as an aid in your spiritual search or as a hindrance. But a person because if you're unfit, if you're not taking care of yourself, you can get limited. It'll not be easy for you to sit in meditation also. To sit cross-legged will not be easy. So that certain sense of discipline does create the ability for you to move forward on the spiritual path. But that is not the end of it. The problem with most Hatha Yoga is that that's the end of it. People do them as exercises, and it gives a certain level of clarity, perceptiveness, a certain level of energy within the body. But it does not bring that spiritual vision, which is essential. It does not bring that clarity of consciousness, which is essential. It does not bring that transcendence of mind, which is essential to rajaYoga. And that transcendence of mind, that radiance of consciousness, is essential to Taoism. It's all about cleaning yourself, cleaning the mirrors, so to speak. That is the essential part that creates a beautiful life. Forget about God in heaven and so on. Forget about the devil in hell and so on. All these are complete rubbish according to both rajaYoga and Taoism. They have completely zero meaning. This is not at all important. They seem like childish, made-up little stories, bedtime stories for children, either to relax them or to terrify them, depending on the intent of the storyteller. You see? So the absence of the mind's burdens are essential. And what does that imply? That implies the presence of a meditativeness in your life. Where there's a presence of meditativeness in your life, the darkness disappears, clarity appears, luminosity appears. And luminosity is really virtue. In both rajaYoga and Taoism, luminosity of being is the ultimate virtue. There's no other virtue. All other virtues are subservient to that. If your vision is clear, if your insight is clear, if your pragya is clear, if your chi, your energy, your consciousness is clear, you move towards something higher. You move towards something stronger. Then you float in the sea of consciousness. Then the flowering becomes more possible. The ground of yourself, the soil of yourself has been prepared. You're able to let go into life. You're able to relax into whatever you do. You're able to feel everything as a great overflowing state of joy and bliss. So that is the most beloved state of being when it comes to rajaYoga and Taoism. To move in this state of energy, to become a vibe of peace wherever you are. You see, it's very interesting how Confucius went to meet Lao Tse on top of the mountain, and he came back utterly amazed, utterly surprised, and he said he has met a dragon. And the dragon he meant in Chinese mysticism, in Chinese mythology, of course, the dragon means the highest wisdom, the highest strength, the highest virtues altogether. The closest thing to the divine, in fact. In fact, the divine also is not as valued as the human being who attains to utter clarity. When utter clarity happens to the human being, they say even the divine bows before that state. Which is the whole iconography of the Jain Tirthankaras, for example, or the Gautam Buddha, for example, where even the Devas and the Devis came and they showered petals on them, they showered flowers on them. It's just a way of saying that human consciousness can ascend to such greatness that even the Devas are jealous. And Indian mythology is full of these instances. You see, when a rishi used to attain a great deal of power, a great deal of clarity, a great deal of meditation, a great highest height of samadhi, Indra, the king of the devas or the gods, the demigods, used to get jealous and send someone to distract them. This is what happened with Vishwamitra. He sent a celestial beauty to distract Vishwamitra the sage and to break his penance, because the demigods were scared of human consciousness, that if man becomes so great, what will happen to their position in the universe? So human life is considered an extremely fortuitous and extremely good circumstance to be born in. It's very fundamental. This is very fundamental to Buddhism also, this very teaching. But essentially, where Taoism really takes that flight is that it says that, eventually you can do whatever you want in life. But essentially, life has a dynamism of its own, and all you need to do is to come into harmony with it. It's like the flow of a river. You go with the flow. And Taoism says something very interesting. It says the grass grows by itself. It says the spring happens by itself. It says ultimately there is nothing for us to do but to relax, to be silent, to not be doers, to drop the idea of doing. When you drop the idea of doing, you become creative in your action. You don't go against the tide, you go with the tide. And going with the tide takes you to greater energy. It enhances your energy because now you're riding on the universal wave of energy. And that is at the essence of rajaYoga. You bring all your energies in alignment with the higher energies, and then you feel that you're part of the entirety of existence. You're simply a part of it. but a small but essential part of it. That way your inner flowering happens, your inner peace happens. You're able to move not only into mystical awareness, but into the highest realization of your being. And when that happens, you move towards bliss. What else is remaining? You move towards peace. You move towards undisturbed calmness, tranquility of being. That is extraordinary, that is totality, and that has been the experience of both the Taoists and the yogis. They are joined in this eternal respect for spontaneous living, relaxed, individual, being yourself. And through that path itself, you come to the highest synthesis of your own potential.